Hey guys, Barking Madly here, or Jeff, whatever. Our computer system here at work is verkagt, so I can actually open up anything that's on my hard drive, but can't email, can't get any of the software or any of the Excel spreadsheet and stuff that I use for my normal day-to-day work off of the network drives. And also, funny enough, our telephones are on the same network, so we can't even make phone calls. So, thumbs twiddling. Anyhow, Lambdog, this is back to you about your response to somebody else whose response to somebody else who was being an arrogant prick talking about abortion. Short answer, I agree with you very much on it, but also have something to add to it. I don't know whether I necessarily agree with your reasoning why they get so bookish about it, but your thoughts are as good as any. I have no idea. The only thing I want to add to it is, counter to the militant and arrogant aspect of the folks that generally tend to be on the left, but also tend to be extremely academic and bookish in their thinking. You have the exact opposite side, which are equally intransigent and immobile and unwilling to listen to anything because they know that they're right. And I talk about abortion. I'm more than willing, I've got my own opinions on it. I'm pro-choice. I really don't care. Part of that is my religious or lack of religious give a shit. I guess kind of somewhere in what was it? Bill Cosby had this one line. He's like, when I was young, my dad made things very clear to me. He says, son, I brought you into this world. I can take you out and make another one look just like you. And I don't have kids, don't want kids, so there is that. But I have an interesting dichotomy as far as my point of view on kids, which again helps colors my concern or lack of concern about abortion. One fundamental thing is that it is such a base, ethical, moral, religious, spiritual, whatever you want to call it. Your taste or distaste for it is so fundamental to who you are that it's fine to talk about it. It's interesting to talk about it as long as people don't get offended by, I'm pro-choice, blah. Well, I'm pro-life, fuck you. As long as you can talk about it without getting into a frickin' flaming contest, there's actually a lot of interesting philosophy and thought that can get onto it. But I don't think you'll ever change anybody's mind on it unless they happen to be right on the knife edge, like, I really don't like abortion, but... And then somebody sees pictures of, say, a partial birth abortion or something like that, which is kind of a bullshit tactic, but I can understand. You'll move people a squinch this way or that way, but you're not going to change their fundamental belief. I mean, I think people can change their religious aspect a lot more. I mean, I've known atheists that have found Jesus, and I've known some very fundamental, not orthodox, but very, very spiritual religious folks that have just thrown up their hands and say, a load of horseshit. Seen it both ways. I haven't seen that at all as far as people's point of view on abortion. I think part of that has to do with, if you believe in the concept of a soul, if you believe in the concept of a sin, you're going to believe in it. You're not going to suddenly not. If you believe that group of cells at whatever point is that it is alive, it has a soul, you can't argue that it doesn't. You have faith, one way or the other. Either you're like me and have a pretty scientific thought process on it, that it's, well, at 12 weeks it's essentially a goldfish, or whatever. That's probably the developmental equivalent of a goldfish. I'm not equating people to goldfish, although I think we've all seen people that are probably would be hard-pressed to outperform goldfish on an IQ test or functionally driving and stuff. Anyhow, I digress. But, so anyway, back to the whole concept of it is, I think you've got your like you mentioned, the book smart people that they know because they've read the logic somewhere that A plus B plus C plus D means pro-choice is the way to go. But then you've got other people that are just as parochial because they've read another book that says thou shalt not, And, you know, it gets kind of narrow-minded that way. Now, one thing I will quantify or qualify, there's one, I don't think it was in your video, I think it was in the guy you're responding to. He made the comment that, you know, you're the first one, the biggest abortionist is your God. It's a nasty tactic, it's a low tactic, but I understand where it comes from. There is a group, I don't know, I'm not going to say majority, but a significant group of people that are, I guess you could call them Orthodox Christians, in that the word of the Bible is literally exactly true. There's no interpretation to it. Science doesn't exist, and so on and so forth. That for that specific small group of people that believe that every single action, every grain of sand that falls, every snowflake that falls is a direct action of God, then yeah, that's what they're talking to. And the problem is, as I'm sure you're aware, that's painting with an exorbitantly huge brush. Most of the religious folks I'm friends with and so on are not that, what's the word, orthodox, or there's a word, that literal. They're not that literally biblical. That there's a lot of that the Bible is taught. Some of it's literal, some of it's parable, and but at any rate, there you go on that. An interesting thing to come out of this would be, when did you, or any of the other people that may see this, when did you make up your mind about whether religion was a good thing or a bad thing? And not just because your parents told you this, or because your pastor or priest told you this, but that you did a soul-searching thought on it. And actually, I don't know, when did you come up with your current belief and value, whatever you want to call it, and realize this is what I believe about abortion? And even more fundamentally, when did you come up with your attitude about religion? I think a lot of people are exposed and live in an environment that, if they believe in God, chances are they came up in a religious household. Not always, but chances are. And it's hard to separate from, I believe in God because that's what I've been brought up on all. But at some point, I believe, I have faith in it. There will be at one point in your life when you go, you know what? That makes sense. It works for me. This is how I am. Just curious how, either on abortion or on religion. I really, to point the questions back at me, on abortion, I've never really thought, and it was always something I just never really considered. It was never even a conception to me, or I never conceived of the fact that there's a bad issue of it. Like I said, I'm not religious, so the bad aspect of it never really came through that way. But the funny thing is, my dad's father was a deacon in the Episcopal Church and baptized me. My other grandfather on my mom's side was an elder in the Lutheran Church, so I was brought up in a religious household. My grandparents were very religious. My parents weren't quite so. Although I went to Sunday school, I went to church and all that stuff. But it was. I remember back in Detroit, we were driving into I was sitting in the car with my grandfather. It was an old Ford Maverick, and we're pulling into a Little Caesars Pizza, and we're talking about God, and we're talking about when you died, and angels and all that stuff. And I just had this weird picture of there was the basement in the church there. It was Epiphany Lutheran Church outside of Detroit. And I could have this picture of the one bathroom in there that you go into the stall, you die, you fly out the top of an angel. And I just remember that was the first time I actually had this even inkling that my mind didn't work in a religious way. Although it was more like, I don't know that I get it. Looking back, that's what I think about it. But it wasn't until that same grandfather passed away when I was in 8th grade, and my mom, in a fit of, oh shit, what do I do, said, okay, you're going to catechism. Turns out, by the way, that Lutherans go to catechism as well. Had never been a day in my life, never had to deal with it. All I'd done is on occasion go to Sunday school for a while and go to church on occasion. And all of a sudden I'm being told you're going to go to catechism. And that was at that point we're sitting in the car, and we were driving right by the church at that point. Right. Well, we didn't go to that church, but it was the church that I would go to CCD at. And my mom says, you're going to go to catechism and you're going to get confirmed. And it was just, but Mom, I don't believe in God. It just doesn't work. She's like, I don't care. So it was in 8th grade, probably, no, it was end of 7th grade, beginning of 8th grade. I don't remember exactly when, but I don't remember the time, but I remember the actual moment that it happened. It was just a weird thing. We never talked about religion really in terms of do you or don't you, or had arguments, discussions, logic, or anything about it. But it's just weird that for me, that was the point at which I was able to say, that's where my belief is. And that tends to color, you know, I don't believe in the concept of sin. I don't believe in the concept of soul. So to me, human beings are a collection of cells, big or little, you know, take that for what it is. But the living aspect of it, the conscious aspect of it, is what makes us unique and important. Which is why, to me, a fetus, I don't care. Quite honestly, I don't care. The more, you know, once it becomes a viable life, okay, I care a little bit more, but let me quantify something a little bit else. The old saying, you know, on the sinking ship, women and children first. Quite honestly, if I were, let's see, since this is, we all have a, we at least discussed survival and prepper type aspects. If I'm worrying about, oh, what the heck, I'm getting something going on there. It looks like my memory card's about to fill up. But at any rate, if I had a choice of bringing a 30 or 40-something-year-old into a survival type situation, or bringing a kid, I'd bring the adult for a couple of reasons. One, obviously, you know, they're going to have hands that are capable of doing something right off the bat, assuming they're not a goldfish. But quite honestly, to me, the experiences of a person that has lived a life, the story of who they are, to me, is a lot more important than an infant. And it's weird. I mean, I'm extraordinarily protective of little kids and stuff like that. I don't like people that take advantage of them and whatnot. And it infuriates the living hell out of me when I see, you know, the whole child molestation. We've got that whole thing going on out here in Cali anyway. Maybe that's a dichotomy, and maybe that means I've got a really, you know, it's a really busy place in here, and all of the people talking to me have, you know, they all have their say, and they're always sometimes at odds or whatever. Not really, but it's an interesting way to describe it. But at any rate, my thoughts on your comment and about, you know, but basically, yeah, some of the more book-learned folks can be royal assholes about stuff, and they cling to it viciously. But on the other end of the spectrum, people they've learned their stuff and they cling just as viciously. But having an argument about, you know, trying to change somebody's opinion argument on abortion is just, in my opinion, it's not wasted breath, because I think there's, like I said, there's a lot of good philosophy and arguments and just discussion that can take place. But I just think it is one of those really deep core places in your character and who you are, so that arguing it is, you know, trying to change somebody's mind is kind of pointless. So anyway, good talking with you. Later.